This experiment will serve to show you the 4 different experiments related to the chemical physical changes lab. This will allow you to gather the evidence that you need in order to understand whether it was a chemical or physical change that occurred over the course of that experiment. In addition to watching this video, in order to gather the evidence, you should be completing the pre-lab, which is the work to make sure you're understanding the concept of chemical and physical changes. So for experiment number 1, you're going to be reacting and interacting acetic acid, which is this aqueous acid. It basically looks like water. And we're going to be reacting it with sodium bicarbonate. Okay, sodium bicarbonate essentially is a white powder. Okay, looks like baking soda because it is baking soda. So the experiment says get about 5 milliliters of the acetic acid. Okay. And I'm going to pour it into the larger size test tube. And then using a spatula, obtain a small amount, just a little bit of the front of the scoop, of the sodium bicarbonate. And then we're going to add it together. So I'm going to come close so you guys can see it. As I allow those to react, we're seeing some clear signs of the changes that are occurring. So make sure to record down what observations you're making in relation to this reaction. And oftentimes it's beneficial to even see the interaction after it's over. Okay, so if we wait for this to kind of settle down, you can sort of see where we end up. Still have some bubbles being formed. Kind of looks like Sprite right now. So that's the first experiment. We're going to dispose of it just down the drain because it's safe enough. For the next experiment, it says we need about 4 mils of tap water. So this is just tap water. I'm going to put that into my newly cleaned test tube. Okay. And then the other thing I'm doing is adding a very small amount of this sodium chloride. Okay. So I'm just going to take so sodium chloride is table salt in relation to you gathering data of what the compounds look like. And I'm just going to take table salt, place it into my test tube. And then I'm going to mix them up so that we can see what happens to the two substances once they're together. So if you want to make observations about the two substances together, it looks as though we don't have the sodium chloride anymore. It's disappeared, and we're back to just kind of what the water looked like before. To finish this experiment, we're going to take this liquid, pour it into an evaporating dish, so this little tiny dish. We're actually going to heat this up. Okay. After it's dry again, I'll show you what that experiment looks like. Once your evaporating dish has been allowed to fully heat and dry, this is what it ends up looking like. Okay. So if you notice, there's kind of a white residue at the bottom that wasn't there before I put the substance in and heated it. Okay. So the observation after is there's kind of like a white crystalline solid left behind. The next experiment, we're going to be using barium nitrate, which is again in solution, so it just kind of looks like water. And we're going to be mixing that with potassium chromate, which is this yellow liquid. So about 5 drops of each into a tiny test tube. So I'll come close as I add the potassium chromate to it. You can see how it changed. Okay. So make observations. I can tell you from my perspective, in case it's hard to see, it's definitely thicker than it was. It almost looks like egg yolk It may have also gotten a little lighter. It's still yellow, but it looks more vibrant yellow, potentially a little bit more almost like neon yellow, I would say. So after that, it says pour this solution down the sink, and I'm going to rinse the test tube out several times. The last experiment for this activity is to take solution A, which is this slightly yellowy orangey colored solution, and 5 drops of that mixing with 5 drops of this bluer colored solution. So in the test tube, that's what A looks like. And then when I put 5 drops of B, that's your final result. So I would say it's pretty lime green in color, still fully transparent, just like the water was and just like the solutions were, so no thickening of the material. So those are the 4 experiments that we're doing. Make sure that you take thorough observations of the materials both before and after. And then the objective again is to determine whether it was a chemical or physical change, and then give evidence to support why you believe that. Evidence to support would have to do with those 5 signs of a chemical change, the fact of changes in states of matter, or essentially, light, color, smell, hot and cold, things like that. Or the signs of a physical change, which is the fact that you may have changed the shape and size of the substance, but you didn't make any new particles. That's it. Have a nice night.